you guys hear me? Shelby?
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
but it's kind of faint.
It's faint.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay, I
Really?
guess.
Okay, maybe it was my headphones. I'm in a co-working space, so hopefully it sounds fine. Cool, so we started the stage. We're going live now. I've started recording, so we'll just let people flow in slowly. Maybe give it a minute. Does it sound okay now, Shelby?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. So I think that maybe we'll just get started because we have me and you here. Well, Boredom's also here who will be doing the grants update, so we can give Nassar a little time to join. So welcome everybody to this month's monthly governance working group call. This will probably be the last one of this year, so we'll probably, I guess for a month from now, we'll be in the new year, so last one of the year, which is very exciting. We have a bunch of stuff to cover today. So to just give a quick overview of the agenda. Well, first, before I do that, if you have any questions or if you'd like to speak, please reminder to post in the working group chat channel first, just so we can navigate any spam that's happening. Feel free to, when you're called up, just raise your hand and we can bring you to the stage. Happy to include anybody who would like to share anything at the end of this call outside of the agenda, but just make sure to ping us in the working group chat first. So on the agenda today, we have a couple proposal overviews. We want to do a big update on everything that's happened with the Radicle Grants Program review. So we'll have Boredom here to give an update on next steps. I'll also give a quick review on some of the proposed next steps that we set from the Radicle Governance Working Group regarding participation requirements. So I'll give an update there, and Boredom will kind of give an update on next steps, so everybody can start also preparing for the first on-chain governance proposal that will be happening. So that'll be good. I'll give a quick overview on an open temperature check regarding reevaluating participation requirements in governance. This will also be mentioned as we kind of go through some of the other proposals. Nassar will give an update on some of the growth initiatives that we have going on, as well as some of his thinking behind a proposal behind kind of the turning the growth initiative into more of a proposal for running a grant style, so he'll give an update there. And then Shelby will actually be giving an update on some of our thinking regarding delegation. So Shelby and I are diving into a new project to start activating Radicle governance by getting more people to delegate, educating on delegation and all of that. So Shelby's going to give a quick reminder on how delegation works, and then provide some thinking on our projects for the new year. So I think that covers it. Again, if you have anything else that you'd like to add to the agenda, feel free to just ping it in the working group. I guess I sound like a tumble dryer. I hope I still don't. Finton, let me know. I don't know what that is. It's probably because I'm in a phone booth. So without further ado, one more thing. A quick reminder for anybody who's creating and managing proposals. Again, there's this such thing as a proposal champion. It's something that we outline when we create the proposal in the first place. So there's a responsibility of the proposal champions to be kind of on top of moving proposals through different stages of governance. And so I think that we found that a couple people haven't really understand what that or had a clear understanding of what that responsibility is. It's something that Shelby and I in the working group can support with. We can keep proposals moving through. We can keep sending reminders, but it's really on the proposal champions to keep proposals moving from stage to stage. So a reminder that in the Radicle Governance Hub, which is linked in a bunch of different places, this has, and the Radicle Governance README, which is pinned in the radicle.community forum, it gives you the steps for how to keep moving things through from stage to stage. Obviously, this process is a work in progress, and we welcome any feedback that we have to make this process better and easier for people to use. But just a reminder that if you're kind of signing on as a proposal champion, you are responsible for taking it to the next stage or offloading the responsibility to someone within the governance working group. So just a quick reminder there as we start to see more temperature checks and more discussions starting within the community. Okay, cool. So without further ado, I will pass it along to, I guess, Boredom to give the grants proposal, and then Shelby, we can talk about I'll talk about the participation requirements first. Sorry, just looking at our agenda. So to start off, I wanted to review an open temperature check that I think is really important for all of us to take a look at, which is reevaluating the participation requirements in the Radicle governance module. So the quick overview on this is that we have participation requirements that are set in our off-chain and on-chain votes. So according to our governance process, there's a 4% of total RAD supply participation requirement for passing formal reviews, which again are snapshot polls, and governance proposals, which are on-chain votes. So this means that for any proposal to pass a formal review and an on-chain governance proposal, it must receive at least 4 million votes. So this is a requirement that was actually forked along with the fork of the compound governance module. That's what the Radicle governance module is. It's a compound fork. And so while these parameters are tried and true, I think we realized with the failed formal review for the Radicle Grants Program, in which the Radicle Grants Program received a majority of votes in the snapshot poll, but still failed to meet participation requirements, is that these participation requirements might not be as finely tuned to Radicle governance as we once believed. So with 50% of RAD token supply locked in the Radicle Treasury and a large percentage locked in vesting contracts, and also a large percentage unactivated, meaning undelegated or unused in governance. Maybe they're in custody, they're in investors' hands. Basically, we realized that the actual supply that can be used in governance is much lower than the total token supply. And so we think that there needs to be kind of a reevaluation of what our participation thresholds are, that's based in and calculated based off of this actual supply instead of the total token supply. So I created a temperature check because I think that this is something really important that we need to prioritize if we want to get any governance proposals through. I think that this will probably be a blocker for us getting the Radicle Grants Program through, and changing the participation requirements in the governance module requires a successful governance vote in itself. So this is going to take a lot of coordination, and so I'm prioritizing the analysis of this, and I want to move the temperature check into the next stage this week. It has gotten a little bit of engagement. Shelby and we have Mario from one of our contributors has also chimed in there as well. But I'm in the I'm in the process of actively reevaluating our participation requirements and have a couple discussion questions there that would be really interesting to get people's thoughts on. So I would really ask everybody to go take a look and provide your thoughts. The initial thinking, just for everybody to get a gauge on what's my head, is that the easiest first step is to just cut the participation threshold in half, since 50% of tokens are locked in the Radicle Treasury. Obviously, this is kind of more of just like a short-term solution, and I feel like there's more active analysis that can go into the distribution of RAD across our stakeholders to and understand how that impacts the amount of tokens that are actually available for governance. But that's a good first step that I think could help us keep moving proposals forward through governance and keep activating the Radicle Treasury. I'm also working with a contributor, Autoslam, in the Discord to create a Dune dashboard that will give us more of this, discrete analysis of where Radicle tokens are and distributed across what addresses, and hopefully this will give us a better picture of again, that active supply of tokens that can be used in governance. But that's my initial thinking, and something that I'd like to keep moving forward. So if anybody has any thoughts feel free to start dropping them in the channel now or chime into this temperature check. Again, I'm going to be moving this temperature check into discussion mode where I'll be making a proposal to make some changes. And so I think that this would be really great to get everybody's thoughts on so we can move this in tandem of getting the Radicle Grants program to the final stages.
Just FYI,
and on that,
I also just shared the link for this lovely temperature check in the working group channel if anybody wants to go take a look now.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that, Shelby. Also in this process, I wanted to just note that we've updated the voting timeframes for any formal reviews. So if you're creating a formal review, and we've added this to all the documentation, so you don't have to remember, but any snapshot polls that you create for formal review should start on a Monday at 5 p.m. 1700 CET and end the following Monday at 1700 5 p.m. CET. The goal for this is to also make it easier for us to be sourcing participation in formal reviews by giving everybody kind of a consistent time frame in which they are to evaluate formal reviews that are active on Snapshot. So hopefully, again, that will be supporting increased participation in Radicle governance, but this temperature check, again, is very important that we kind of prioritize and keep moving through so we can keep proposals active and things moving through governance. So that's it from me. I'll pass it on to Boredom to give an update on the Radicle Grants program. And Boredom, after you kind of give an update, I can also talk a little bit through why we want to keep moving the Radicle Grants program proposal through, even though it didn't meet the participation requirements for this formal review. But I'll pass it off to you first.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So in the working group chat, I just dropped like a quick slide that I put together that I'm going to talk through. So it might just be easier because there's like a good list of things that we need to do to keep moving forward. So from left to right, it's just kind of like showing you what we've done up until now. But kind of where we're at now is sort of like 3/4 the way through, where it says what we recently did in the last week was we created a GitHub repo, which has any sort of like work that we've done up until now, as well as the actual governance proposal, which is the final step where things go up on Sybil for a vote where we're actually going to execute code. So that's been coded up. The next thing to do, which is getting into this like list of things that are labeled as soon, is a governance proposal needs to be audited. So the code that I just mentioned, we're going to have someone audit that. Once it's audited, then we'll put it up for a snapshot vote. And in tandem while we're doing this, we're going to start organizing the Radicle Grants org, including like getting people's addresses connected to the multi-sig. So these would be the committee members that we've listed. Then once that's created, then we'll mirror everything that we put up on GitHub and anchor it on Radicle. And then assuming that it would pass the vote, then we could consider the grants program created, which is the far right there. One thing I wanted to call out throughout like this entire process was I think like probably two main things that are basically one main thing that I think would have helped me speed things up, is the importance of code. So I noticed that like when I started writing out the governance proposal code, which is sort of like considered the final step, I think if you're writing a proposal, especially if you're looking to get treasury funding for a sub-DAO, the way that this grants program is. So if you're trying to think of any other sub-DAO that you want to work with on Radicle, I would really highly recommend putting that governance proposal code actually as like your first step. And the reason is when I started writing the code, I noticed like it becomes a really nice forcing function where anything that you can't explain with code, you're going to want to really be really specific and detailed in your write-up. But if it is explained by the code, you kind of don't need to explain much. And one recent example of this was Nas had his proposal, albeit is not a sub-DAO proposal and is a pretty simple one, but just removing the registration fee. He just had like this snippet of code in his first proposal that he wrote up, and to me that explained everything. So it explained for me, like I actually honestly didn't need to read much. I just needed the code snippet. And so I kind of like noticed that as I was kind of gearing down on these last steps for the grants program, that having that code up front is super useful, and it kind of helps. I think it helps proposals kind of write themselves. So that's just like one thought I'd share for anyone else that goes through this process.
Yeah, definitely great insights. I think that also we saw with the grants program that probably having the code would raise some of the questions around like compensation earlier, which is kind of the main points that were being discussed in the formal review, and probably could already raise that, keep proposals moving forward. And so I think that that will be really important to start introducing into best practices as well for people who are championing proposals, especially as we start to see some more of these sub-DAOs form, which will be more treasury distributions related to larger prime directives that don't need to be discussed in the actual proposal. It's more like getting the funding out of the treasury into the DAO that then can have their own governance process for discussing the objectives and goals related to that. So I think that that point is also really nice, and I think we've learned a lot from this Radicle grants proposal lifecycle, and I'm really excited that we can kind of put it into the next stages. So what's our timeline on that again, Boredom? I think that we could probably get it audited within the week because of how simple the contract is, and we also kind of already have the Radicle org set up. So I'm wondering how much will be limited in passing this the RGP proposal successfully through governance because of these participation requirements. So that's kind of a discussion to have, is if we could reach the participation requirements, which I think we'll probably have to discuss with the Radicle Foundation and start talking about if the Radicle Foundation can get involved in voting. So I feel like we'd have to do an honest evaluation of if we could actually pass this through governance. We've done it before, but I feel like that has to be a discussion that's happening, and then we're also understanding and communicating that transparently with the community. So I think that this week we should kind of talk through getting it audited, and then talking through if we could make sure that we can source all of the votes to get this through governance.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I think it'll basically sort of I think it's in a good space where it can sit where it needs to sit until we have those discussions with people who are holding a bit more rad. So my guess is like as far as like actually having it technically ready, it sounds like probably like a week or two. But actually getting it on Snapshot doesn't really make sense until we talk to people. So if you can, I know like a few people who have a lot of rad that I can like reach out to myself, but if you think talking to the foundation would be good, I would love help with that, and I'm totally down for it.
I think I'll be approaching the foundation and also discussing the foundation's role in governance, like for example when the foundation should or should not vote, and I think that creating some standard for the foundation's interaction with Radicle governance and presenting that to the community will be a great output of this discussion as well. And then I also think that we've already started re-engaging rad holders, early contributors, investors, delegates. And I think that we'll be able to kind of keep sourcing those one-on-one through Shelby and I's work to also get people redelegated. This is also, and I guess actually I'll leave that to Shelby to kind of walk through kind of like also how to start delegating. I think it's important for everybody on this call to know that you have to delegate either to yourself or to another address to participate in an on-chain vote. And so Shelby at the end of this call will kind of give like a quick overview on how to do that, and we'll share materials as well. But I think that that's all from the grants update. Anything else, Boredom?
No, not really. But if anyone wants to bounce ideas off me, if they're thinking of doing sub-DAOs, feel free to reach out. I can go into more detail, like just things I think would help, like speed certain things up.
Nice, cool. Also, I'm sharing this post. I don't know if Shelby, if this is what you're sharing, I see that you're typing. But basically, this post gives a little bit of an overview of why the Radicle Governance Working Group proposed that we keep moving the Radicle Grants program through governance. It's been up for 10 days and hasn't gotten any negative feedback, so we're kind of assuming the proposal is generally accepted by the community. It just walks through why we believe that the participation requirements are the main limiting factor to the grants proposal to keep moving through to an on-chain vote. Participation increase from the first failed formal review to the second prove that this proposal has really been worked on and has been has progressed to a stage in which we believe it's fit for moving to an on-chain governance. And we don't think that doing another formal review would actually support the proposal in any way. It would just limit it. So just wanted to say that there's we try to make this process as public as possible. And so this is kind of why we're moving things through to the next stage. So feel free to share any feedback there. So let's wrap on the grants. We can move on to the next couple of proposals that are open. I'll pass it off to Nassar. You and I can both kind of just discuss latest thinking on the removing the name registration fee and the org reimbursements, fund. So first, I can just give a quick update on the name registrations fee. You guys already just discussed this. It's moved into formal review. Again, the formal review actually passed with a majority, but technically failed due to participation requirements. So we ran into the same issue that we had before. However, the majority was a resounding for the proposal. We had around 886,000 RAD participate across 27 voters. So I think that there should be a public debrief into if this is enough community sentiment to keep moving this proposal through to an on-chain vote, or if, again, we need to be waiting for these participation requirements to be evaluated. I think that's something that Nassar and I will do as a next step, since this formal review just closed this week, and we'll provide an update to the community promptly. And then I'll pass it off to Nassar to provide any more thoughts there and maybe give an update on the org reimbursements fund proposal that we had in discussion stage of governance. Can you speak, Nassar? There you are. Perfect. I think you're muted.
I am muted. Sorry, I was just getting the link from the org post I did. Yep. So just updating on two pieces. One is the deprioritization of org reimbursement fund that we were setting up. I just shared a link to the forum post. It kind of outlines my reasoning for kind of putting that on pause. But in summary, onboarding orgs and kind of and that process of getting people set up was just too cumbersome, and I felt like we were burning partner relationships it was taking up to 3 hours and a lot of time and money. And so I fed that kind of information back to a bunch of the product teams, and I know they're working to address that. So hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be in a place where we can go back out to onboard orgs. So that's that front. And then just a brief update on the growth initiatives, kind of the temperature check I did. We've just been doing kind of top level thinking and putting a proposal together for building kind of a growth sub-DAO and bringing kind of the core growth people and the community into that. But based on kind of everything else right now, I think we'll kind of pick that up in the new year. But yeah, I think those are the two things that I wanted to speak on. I guess the registration fee proposal adjustment is I don't have much to say on that. It's just it's great that I'm undefeated in terms of votes, but it seems like the proposal didn't quite make it. And yeah, I'm looking for guidance really on how to carry things like this forward. I've been getting a bunch of feedback from Shelby and Abby on kind of carrying these things to completion. I'm personally not that clear on all of those things at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, looking at the discussions, seeing if there's, I mean, again, there was a majority sentiment on the formal review. And so I think it would just be, again, creating a public posting. We propose that we move this forward and do that promptly, as long as there's no, negative feedback or contrasting opinions on what we should do with that, again, because I think it's very easy to show that there's community sentiment and participation in that post. So Nassar, you and I can move that forward this week and discuss. And I think that also will kind of put this org reimbursement fund on the back burner, just because org's onboarding is being deprioritized at the moment. I think that I'll just move it to the archive category of the governance forum, just so people know that this is kind of, we're going to pause on this for a little bit, and maybe we can bring this back to the forefront as we start discussing more of the initiatives around this growth sub-DAO that we're starting to structure, seeming that would actually be a growth initiative that would be funded by a sub-DAO in the future. So very excited to see more thoughts on that in the new year. And hopefully we can get some of the governance parameters figured out, so we can keep all of these, initiatives active and moving forward. So, any questions?
Sounds good. I'm just gonna make one note on it. Is that I guess, and I've kind of raised this before. I guess I'm still unclear on kind of like the number of steps right now to get a proposal through. It seems like there's a lot more than like this proposal. I feel like I've done lots of duplication each time, and I'm just wondering whether it's whether we need to do all those steps, I guess, and I'm just trying to understand the rationale behind them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that well, so the steps, again, Shelby's done like a really good job of outlining the steps that we have in these proposals. Again, I think that, and we've had this discussion before, this governance process is for escalating discussions from the community to an on-chain governance proposal, which is like executable code. And so I think that the issue that we're experiencing with, why do certain things need a lot of steps is related to how people view different problems within the governance ecosystem, right? Some of them are kind of more subjective social problems that need to be discussed with smaller groups of people around certain objectives. But others are, related to contract upgrades and treasury distributions, which are actually like, pretty, you could say, risky, actions within the ecosystem. And so having a lot of steps, even if it feels like sometimes it's a little bit more work, creates more barrier to make sure that we're really thinking through and the code that's being, executed within the system, and also the reasoning behind that. So I think that this is, the first step. I think this process is always an iteration, but I would think through, what steps you think are a little bit redundant, and if that is just specifically for this name registration proposal specifically, or if it's something more generally that you think would improve the system, and we can talk through that. But feedback always available, but just keep in mind that this process is to make sure that we're safely and collectively upgrading a system together, and we need to keep as lightweight as we can, but we also need to make sure that we have specific, guardrails in place to make sure that the things that are getting to an on-chain vote are things, that are predictable and have, we've qualified the risk associated with them. So feel free to look at the README and the Governance Hub and provide thoughts there, Nassar, if you have explicit feedback that you'd like, or in the Discord. Probably in the README post, you could provide some thoughts there as well.
That's good.
Yeah, and I'm also just going to share that. Oh, you got it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a confusing, or like, you know, governance is not like a simple, super intuitive thing. And it also doesn't help that each DAO is a bit different. So yeah, it's definitely, and you know, like we're still trying to figure things out and trying to make the process as smooth and understandable as possible. But that is also a hard task, and the only way that is going to improve is by getting feedback from folks who are, you know, trying to navigate it. So please, like, always feel free to reach out and say, hey, this sucks, this doesn't make sense, or maybe we could try this, or maybe we could do this. Like, you know, always open for feedback and suggestions for improvement.
Cool. Appreciate. Should I jump off the stage?
Yeah, if you want, unless you want to stay on.
Get out of here, man.
Okay, never mind. Get out.
Appreciate.
Cool. Thanks for the update. Okay, so moving on, we'll just close up with an update from Shelby to kind of walk through, again, a reminder of how delegation works, which I think is really important for anybody who's interested in participating in the upcoming on-chain vote regarding the Radicle grants proposal. Like, please tune in and listen here, and then an overview of kind of how we're approaching delegation in the future. Shelby?
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, Abby kind of touched on it earlier, I went over it a bit earlier, but I just wanted to do a quick reminder of kind of how delegation works with Radicle, or in the governance process. As Abby mentioned, it's delegation enables voting in the Radicle governance process. So in order to vote, rad holders have to delegate voting rights to either their own address or another address. Delegation takes place on Sybil, and for on-chain votes, but also I don't know if this was clear or not, but anything that's delegated on Sybil is actually also mirrored onto Snapshot for off-chain votes as well. Abby worked really hard getting that all figured out and set up, and it should be working. If anybody has issues, please let us know. And yeah, it's delegation is you know, a really important tool in order to kind of boost governance participation. We have, you know, we discussed earlier in the call reassessing maybe the, you know, the required participation threshold. That is like one side of kind of getting out of this governance gridlock that we're in right now. But another key part of that is also activating, you know, larger stakeholders or larger rad holders to try to participate. And one way to do that is through delegation. So Abby and I have kind of been brainstorming after a few discussions with a few different folks and how we could maybe create or like kind of boost this delegation process for Radicle. And what we kind of came up with is creating some sort of like delegation platform or program in order to kind of recognize community members as you know, like official delegates. This would help make delegation a bit easier to navigate for rad holders who don't or can't vote on proposals themselves. The idea is also to, you know, empower community members to take ownership and participation of Radicle governance, but it also, you know, again, like I said, will help reach required participation thresholds in voting rounds. And yeah, so what would this look like? MakerDAO and ENS DAO actually already have a program like this. Maker actually, and they're both super new. Like Maker just launched their platform in August of this year. Here, I'll share. It kind of looks like this. I just dropped the link in the chat. Maker, of course, it's like pretty intense and bureaucratic in like Maker is, but yeah. So what we were thinking about is maybe creating something similar for Radicle, where community members could apply to be kind of recognized delegates. They there would be certain like requirements and expectations for these delegates, but these would definitely need to be, you know, defined before we kind of jump into a program. I know based on a lot of conversations now with one of our contributors that Maker, when they started this, they just kind of started the program and didn't really define a lot of things very well, and they ended up having to retroactively go back and fix a lot of things. So I think it's good for us to take some time to really think about how we want to do this. Some open questions include like the application process. Like, what does this look like? And also, who is evaluating the applications? How can the community be involved with this? What are expectations of delegates specifically? So that could mean, you know, like requiring participation in monthly working group calls like this call, you know, active forum participation in discussions, you know, obviously voting on each of the proposals. But and this could be other things too. These are just a few like initial brainstorming points that Abby and I spitballed yesterday. And then how long should the delegation, like how long can you be a delegate? Like, is it unlimited time until you want to per se retire, or should it be capped? And also like compensation is also a question. We've been basing a lot of some of the ideas and initial ideas and research off of like Maker and ENS's models that they're using so far. But again, this is so new. Like, yeah, Maker was in August and ENS was just last month. So, you know, these are far from perfect systems in practice yet. So it would be also kind of a big undertaking for us to, you know, create a process that would work for Radicle. But I think it would be worthwhile to get this set up sooner rather than later, to help also get over this participation threshold issue going forward as well. So I would love to hear any thoughts, or if anybody has any questions or concerns or input they would like to give now. Abby and I are going to work on creating like a formal discussion post about it, which we'll post on the forum at some point, hopefully this week, latest next week. So you'll have a chance to also leave comments and questions there. But you know, community feedback, like in everything we do, is super important for this. So yeah, any thoughts or questions initially? Feel free to, if you would like to speak, you can also write in the chat, or you can write your comment in the chat in the working group channel. Otherwise,
Cool.
leave it at that. I also just had, there's no other comments or questions. I just had a few other small, quick little reminders at the end. But Abby, if you wanted to say anything, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say something about delegation too. I mean, I think that as Shelby and I start to re-envision how we can make it easier to delegate, it's also how we can make it easier to become a delegate. So I think that this is also going to be a great opportunity for community members to get involved as delegates within the Radicle ecosystem, and we'd love to craft this, you know, delegation program also around the people who will be delegates in the future. So we're going to be having chats with delegates in other protocol ecosystems, but for people who, you know, are on this call, who are getting involved with governance, this is kind of just like an open call to start reaching out, asking questions, and kind of getting involved in this process, because the goal here is to empower community members to act as community delegates for Radicle stakeholders, to trust, to participate in governance. And so it's a really exciting opportunity, at least I think. And so if this is something that sounds interesting to you, we'd love to chat and start getting your thoughts, so we can include you in this process. That's just all I wanted to add there.
Yeah, great. So I guess just my last few final comments or reminders are just to mention to check out the Governance Hub. I posted it earlier in the chat just a few posts ago. If you're curious about learning more, or if you're new here, if you're new to Radicle governance, just to check out kind of how it works and how to get involved. That is a pretty comprehensive overview of how to do that. I'm also just sharing now in the chat, we have a Radicle Governance Twitter, which is pretty lit. I'm pretty pumped that we have 300 followers in the first 3 weeks. I know that's like, people are like, that's nothing, but I'm super psyched about it. That's more of kind of, you can think of this Twitter account as more like a ticker account of like just giving you the short and sweet updates, links, new things, vote now, this closes here, that kind of stuff. So that I recommend giving that a follow if you haven't already. And then also, if you missed this call or you wanted to listen to this call again or read notes from this call, we take notes and record all of the working group calls and post them at the link I shared at the bottom. You can go back and look at previous calls here too if you would like. And the notes for this call will be posted shortly after either tonight or tomorrow.
Cool. Thanks for all those updates, Shelby. So I think that's everything that we had on our agenda. So if anybody has any questions or things that they want to chime in and chat, now's the time. You could just raise your hand if you're interested. And if not, if I don't see any hands raised within the next minute, then I think that we'll end it here. And we'll then put this call up on YouTube and we'll tweet it out so other people can chime in. I think that there's talks to figure out if Discord stage is the best place to do this governance discussion. I'm enjoying the Discord stage. It would be great to have video so people can share slides, which is something that Shelby raised. So maybe we'll be changing the format in the future, but I think Discord stage is pretty nice as a place to just hop in and listen. So, okay, cool. So we'll end it here. Thank you everybody for joining. Again, feel free to use this working group channel and the discussion channel to share any questions or follow-ups that you have from the call today. And we will see you all in the new year. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good holiday season. Bye.